My name is Bob Cialdini, and all my life I've been a persuasion researcher, studying social influence and the factors that cause people to say yes to requests or proposals or recommendations. I want to talk about one of those factors. It's something that we can call the descriptive social norm, which involves evidence of what most other people are around you, like you, are doing in a particular situation and what they have been doing, which causes us to do the same because that piece of information gives us evidence about what's likely to be adaptive and wise behavior. It tells us what's likely to be approved in our group, and it also tells us what's feasible for us, what we can do in that situation if a lot of people like us are able to do it. Well, I think in the general topic of persuasion, it has to do with the fact that all my life I've been a sucker. I've been a pushover for the appeals of various fundraisers or salespeople who've come to my door, and I'd be in unwanted possession of, subscriptions to Beekeeper's Digest or whatever, and they would leave, and I would say to myself, "What just happened here, Cialdini? You didn't want this thing, but you paid for it. It must have been something other than the merits of the case that they were making. It must have been the way they made the case, the psychological factors that they engaged in the presentation of what they had to offer that grabbed me and got me to say, yes, that's worth studying." You do a study in which you include a presentation that has one psychological factor in it that you'd like to study and test it against another condition that has maybe a limited version of that principle or that practice versus a control group that has none of it. And then you look to see how many people say yes to that same request with the full measure of the principle of influence versus a half measure versus none.
What's an example of the kinds of things that you manipulate with those conditions in your experiments?
Well, let's talk about the principle of descriptive social norms that we call social proof. The evidence doesn't come from the logic of the case or the evidence that you amass. It comes from the number of people around you who are doing it. That's the key. So if you give people evidence that a lot of others, just like them, are doing this, they're more likely to be willing to do it. So let me give you an example of a study we did in hotels. If you've ever been to a hotel recently, I know you have, you'll likely find a little card there in the room asking you to reuse your towels and linen. And we were interested in what you could say on the card that would increase the likelihood that people would do that. So we arranged with the managers of some hotels to exchange these cards or randomly assign them to various rooms. And one of the cards was the standard approach of the hotel. Please reuse your towels and linen. That will help the environment. It will be something that allows us to be more sustainable in our use of water and electricity. That was the standard. We had another one that also included that, but added a piece of information. It was the majority of people who stay at our hotel do reuse their towels and linen at least once during their stay. And that message increased compliance with the request by 26.9%. Now here's the third condition. Right? This one, the sign said, the majority of people who've stayed in this room have reused their towels. Not the majority of people in this hotel. The people in room 212, just like you. And now we get significantly more. Now we get over 30% of compliance with the request, because it's not just a lot of people, it's comparable people, similar to you, which makes it seem more relevant to your behavior. You would think so, but it doesn't. It turns out that it's not this, oh, everybody else is keeping the environment clean so I can litter into it. No, people don't say that. They say, oh, well, the right thing to do, the appropriate thing to do, and the one that's going to produce the least disapproval, right, is to keep the environment clean. And so when you see a clean environment, you're much less likely to litter than if you see a dirty and a littered environment. We've done that research. It's a small message, but it's a powerful one. People want to follow those who are around them, like them, as a way to make the right choice. We've actually done a study here in Arizona where I live. There's something called the National Petrified Forest, and they have a problem, which is people who visit the forest steal petrified wood, shards and crystals and pieces of petrified wood. And I have a graduate student who visited with his fiancée, who he described as the single most honest person he had ever known. She never borrowed a paper clip that she didn't return, right? And the park had a sign at the entrance that said, so many people are stealing wood from the forest floor that it's endangering the integrity of the forest. Please don't do it. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. Inside the message, look at all the people who are doing this undesirable thing, lies the message, look at all the people who are doing it, which is the descriptive norm. Now you're working against yourself because it's what everybody does. Yeah. So he reports that he and his fiancée saw this sign, and while he was still reading it, he felt her elbow in his ribs, and she said, we better get ours too. What could cause the single most scrupulously honest person he had ever met to become an environmental criminal and loot a national treasure in the process? Something as powerful as the descriptive norm. Two college roommates are having a conversation, and one says to her roommate, I think I'm going to get a tattoo. And the other says, well, why is that? And the first says, because it gives me a chance to show my individuality, to do my own thing, stand out from the crowd. And her friend says, any other reason? And she said, well, yeah, everybody else is doing it. Right? So exactly the opposite of individuality. And once again, social proof overpowers other factors in the situation.